Welcome to the show, BABU GOGINENI garu.
Thank you.
Really glad to have you here. Welcome to Australia, and I'm given to understand you're coming for the second time.
That's right. Yes.
So how has Australia changed for you from your last visit?
I have no idea, Andy. I just landed over the weekend, and where I'm staying is a beautiful neighborhood.
Okay.
But I also remember Australia as being a marvelously beautiful place.
Right.
So that has not changed.
Fantastic. And so what brings you to Australia, Ipurani?
As in the last time I came to Australia, I came here in the year 2000 to organize Australis 2000 in Sydney. It was a gathering of humanists from around the world. This time I'm here to help set up the South Asian Humanist Association. So people from Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, India, who might be secularly inclined, but who have not had the chance to affirm or to assert their humanist identity. We want to create a forum and a network from where liberal, modern, secular ideas can be spread. We know that very often immigrant communities confuse culture with religion, and they tend to create ghettos of culture, and that's not good enough for those who have left their countries for a better life and who refuse to integrate with the mainstream. They meet each other, they watch the same movies. The integration with mainstream, I think, is important. So we want to encourage and challenge. We want to invite and promote the idea that all communities, especially of the South Asian extraction, should be open to be part of the global enterprise of taking civilization forward. This is a secular movement. This is a movement that recognizes the role that religion has played in the past, and also understands that religion is not adequate to take civilization further forward. Modern values, human rights, the method of science, reason, democracy, these should be not just for the immigrant community, but for the global community. That's what humanists talk about. And the South Asian Humanist Association that we are promoting hopes to do that, especially for the South Asian community.
Right. A couple of questions come through that. I mean, one, you kind of emphasize on the fact that it is a secular movement, meaning obviously kind of including all religions in that. So what about people who don't believe in any religion, and the role religion played in the past few thousand years? So has the development been despite religion, or is it because of that? How has that been in the past?
It all depends on how one looks at it. But if one were to look at it from a historian's perspective, we know that over the last 400 years, especially in Europe and in North America, the role of religion has reduced, and concomitantly the welfare of humanity has really expanded. So one can see that to the extent that religion retreats from public life, to that extent societies welcome human rights. We also know that in countries like Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Libya, name the country, Bangladesh, Pakistan, to the extent that religion has increased its role, to that extent the happiness of people has reduced. So we see a link. Did religion play a role? Most certainly it did. I am only saying that the answers of religion are no more adequate. The methods of religion are probably against what the modern world now requires. Authoritarianism, claims to infallibility, claims of an afterlife, punishment in the afterlife or reward in the afterlife. Humanists talk of justice in this life, not of what might happen in the next one. So humanism is about a human-centered society, but it's also about one which recognizes the individual, not so much the community, because rights belong to individuals, not communities.
Right.
In the name of the community, many rights have been usurped. That's the history of humanity. So yes, the role of religion is recognized, but an urgency of limiting it to personal life is asserted. Anyone can hold a personal belief. It's the way they relate to the universe, to their fellow beings. But if it's not compatible with human rights, that will be challenged.
If you look back, say, in the history, and when I say 3,000 to 4,000 years prior to where we are now, whether it's Indus Valley civilization or Mayan in the South American world, or the Mesopotamian religion, civilization, etc., religion did not have as much of a role, but I think civilizations did thrive. But I think come to the mid 1500s, I mean, religion took a really bigger seat. And one would have assumed that with development, the role of religion would actually come down, but we are here and it has not. So when did it enter in the mainstream of lives of people, and then why is it still around so much? Because
I think the way to look at it is contrary to what you said. In all the ancient civilizations, religion played an important role, including the concept that the king was God.
Right.
So the religion of the country was whatever the god said, and that was what the king said. The Egyptian king was also God, and so on and so forth. One would see that intimate link. But as civilization progressed, as social organization, as political organization of society evolved and took a more concrete form, a more mature form, a more stable form, one was able to distinguish governance and belief, and the specialized nature of the priesthood and the specialized nature of the rulers. So there was a slow division of this. By the time we come to the 1400s, and I assume we are now talking about Europe really, we are looking at the stranglehold on the life and the minds of the people of Europe by the religious authorities of the time. So the state then was part of religion. The Pope ruled everything, ruled your mind, decided what you could write and what you could read and how you could think, what you could paint, how you could sing. And anyone who broke out of step was punished by death. This is how bad it was. And the state was simply an agent of the church. The state was part of the church. But around the 1500s, with the Renaissance is really a gift of the Arabs to Europe, because the Arabs came to Europe as invaders. They didn't come as gentle travelers and tourists with a visa. They came as invaders. They occupied Spain, but they learned what Europe, 1,000 odd years prior to their invasion, was thinking of. They discovered Greek civilization. They translated that into Arabic. They found out what the Romans were thinking of. They translated that into Arabic. They went back. Of course, the conqueror is not the one who was reading the book. They came with their scholars. And the scholars started thinking about it and advancing the knowledge of the Greeks. The rebirth of Greek civilization is what Renaissance is. Rebirth of Greek learning. And it passed on to Europe, and Europe revelled in this ancient knowledge that was made freshly available to them. An important thing is it was not revivalism. It was a rebirth. It was not asserting that the Greeks were right. It was like you see in many parts of the world today. Our holy book is right. The book knew everything. Our 4 books were right. Our ancient rishis knew everything. No, they didn't say that. That would be revivalism. What they did, was they took the inspiration from the learning of the past, the openness of that inquiry, and tried to integrate it into their contemporary lives.
Right.
And new technology developed and new way of understanding the world that they were denied for about 1500 years.
Right.
Because of the stranglehold, as I said, of the church on the minds and lives of people.
Right.
So this fantastic thing also led people to understand Aristotle and all the great lawgivers of the ancient times. And they said that's true. The state and religion must be not entangling with each other. To the extent they could manage that, there was a separation of powers and roles. And suddenly with the French Revolution, we see that no longer was the state part of the church, but the church became part of the state. So the state was supreme. The church was its agent. It didn't decide everything. Napoleon looked at the Pope with great scorn. He did not really encourage the dominance of the church. That's a development that has been continuing. It's a wonderful development. And that's something, except for, I sadly note, the countries of the Middle East, most countries have recognized. Some are making the mistake of bringing back religion into the state. But around the world, societies have matured enough to keep religion and state separate.
Okay.
It's good, because state is about governance, religion is about belief. And no belief needs the power of the state, because once belief needs the support of the state, where is the moral power of that belief? When you need a danda and a pistol to make somebody agree to the truth of the belief.
So belief is not free will in that scenario.
It's forced on you.
Right.
It's compulsion. It's unacceptable. And if we are not vigilant, then there is a danger of going back as well to the old system. With the worldwide, so to say, renewal of right-wing politics, of appealing to unreal identities, neither historically justified nor contemporarily validated. Yeah. It's easy to bring people into a frenzy by pointing to the other and saying that person, that community, that particular category in society is responsible for the problems of society.
Right.
That tribal instinct, which at times is incited, needs to be contained. That can be done not from a sectarian identity point of view, it should be done from a universal understanding of humanity, a sense of belonging to all.
Right.
I think humanists strive to do that.
Right. And if I have to kind of put a distinction between humanist versus human rights activists, what would be that distinction?
I think it's a very important question and a challenge to separate them. But it's difficult to separate human rights from humanism. If there are no human rights, humanism has no meaning at all. Religion, on the other hand, depends on belief. And all it requires is a holy book, a prophet, an ancient man, and a divine theory of the origin of the universe. That religion is complete. It doesn't require believers. It first requires all those things. Humanism is parallel to religion, a human tradition. It has existed in all civilizations. If you were to look at the ancient Hindu texts, the Vedas, there are many references to the non-believers. They are not gentle references, but there are references to the non-believers. The holy books of the Abrahamic religions all have references to non-believers. So one would say that these are parallel. If the religious texts mention the non-religious people, they must have coexisted to the extent that the religious allowed them to live. Very often they were killed. In India, The Charvakas are mentioned frequently, but each time they are killed. In the stories, in the Mahabharata, the Charvakas went to King Dharmaraja after the Mahabharata war and said the Ashwamedha Yaga will lead to more murder, more destruction, and why would you want to be Chakravarti? And they were killed. They asked for peace and they were killed. And such is the fate of most non-believers who we recognize as humanists. What did the humanists do? They called on common sense. They appealed to reason. They asserted that your conclusions about something, your beliefs about something, should be based on facts. Not a very odd thing to say today, but in the ancient world, when that was not the way humanity lived, this was revolutionary. Okay. Now, into this stream of thinking, where the human is at the center of everything, that human enterprise should be for human welfare, not for something after this life. This is the only life we have. This is where everything should happen. The happiness and the sadness and the injustice that needs to be corrected. Everything is now, it's here, it's today, and it's for us. Right. It's not the invocation of a divine force, praying to a God to do justice. No. The task of bringing justice belongs to all of us. We are responsible for our actions. We are responsible for our beliefs, and to be sure that those beliefs are based on facts. Right. Because a belief not based on fact is called a speculation, and that leads to mythology, not to knowledge. Right. We are truth-seeking, so to say, animals. We are biological beings. We have instincts, we have desires, we have passions, and we have irrationalities. It's the irrational we want to fight, not emotions, not passions. That's what defines the human. So, what are the humanists? Who are they? They are part of the human tradition of keeping the human at the center of human society and of personal lives, number one. Guided by human values. Human values are not values of Australia, values of India, of Saudi Arabia or America. They are universal. They are what unite us in our common humanity. The fine instincts, the noble ideas, the beautiful thoughts that go with the finest achievements of human society, in the arts, in science, in literature, they all are built on human values, universal, not particular. Humanists believe in democracy, but not in majoritarian rules.
Isn't that self-contradictory? Because democracy per se is you're giving equal rights to everyone, whether someone is either capable of deciding or not. So how would we let?
They would not be self-contradictory if we understand the values on which democracy and the democratic system is valued by us. It believes in liberty, equality, and fraternity. Fraternity is an old word, and it means brotherhood. It ignores the sisters. But the idea is that we have freedom, that we have equality. These are moral values. Equality is not just a legal right, it's a moral value. Liberty is what belongs to all of us. So we don't disagree on that aspect at all. But when we say majoritarianism, we are saying whatever the majority says is right. Sometimes the majority is wrong. The whole world believed that the earth was flat. You would not let the majority decide issues of facts, nor should they decide the matters about rights. So the test of the validity of a democratic decision is whether it stands the test of human rights. Human rights are the guiding principles for all. So humanists, they recognize that voting is a mechanism of democracy, but that should still preserve the spirit and value of democratic principles. That's important. You can't have a whole lot of people in the country vote to take away the rights of others, and 51% is majority. So this mechanism should not be confused with the spirit of democracy. And humanists are all for the freedoms of expression, even when it offends others. If you don't like a TV program, change the channel. There is something called a remote control. You don't like something written in a book, don't read it. You want to burn the book, buy it and burn it. Don't go to the shop and destroy the shop. The whole idea being that you can't, in the name of being offended, interfere with the rights of others. Your right to write a book, my right to read a book are integrated, and others can't interfere with it. Then humanists have been at the forefront of asserting the equality of all humans, the equality of the genders. Show me one religion which has said that men and women were equal. Not one. Show me one religion which was founded by a woman. Not one. They are systems of prejudice aimed at exploiting the weak. If religions did their job, you wouldn't need human rights. The whole instruments of human rights around the world are designed, aimed, instituted to protect the individual, the vulnerable, from the depredations of the old ideas of unexamined beliefs, values, unchallenged assumptions about the nature of the human. We want to question that. Every time a humanist has entered into the freedom of rights issues, into the freedom of belief, religion, they have enriched it. Humanists are not against freedom of religion. They are for the freedom of religion, but privately. Freedom of religion should not interfere with the freedom not to have a religion or not to have a belief. There is no reason why anyone has to be a humanist because he or she has left religion. Let people be, let them think, let them sort out their ideas about the universe and how they relate to other humans. Morality and science are to be secular and autonomous. They should not be dictated by someone. They must be guided by the facts that we discover and influenced by our understanding of human nature. The biggest religion in the world thinks that humans are sinners. What a poor way of looking at the human who's achieved so much. 7.5 billion people in the world. Happier now than they ever were in the past, whatever the age of humankind is. So much wealth created, so much happiness, so much security, nowhere near perfection, probably not even halfway, but better than we were in the past. Why would we accept being called sinners? Why should men, according to the second largest religion in the world, why should men be having more powers and more privileges and more rights than the women? Why should there be the fourth largest belief community in the world advocates the creation of a hierarchy amongst humans? You call it the caste system. Why should that be accepted? So humanism is a new way of looking at it. And in the name of the South Asian Humanist Association, I and my friends who set up the organization are calling for people to look at ourselves in a non-sectarian way, not to be cloistered in cultural ghettos and celebrate what is backward. I have seen, including in Australia, the applause for the murder of young Pranav because he comes from a so-called untouchable caste, and he married someone from the so-called Savarnas. And the father of the girl killed this man, this young man. killed the husband of his daughter, killed the father of his grandchild to be, and many people supported the murderer. So all is not well with the immigrant communities.
Right.
They have come here with their caste, they have come here with their prejudice, and to them it's a challenge. To the others it's an invitation to come and join hands.
And I think one of the core parts of all of these is seeking to have an identity, because I think that's what they kind of fall back or fall into, either belonging to a group or a sect or a brotherhood or whatever that would be.
Yes.
The need for identity, and why does that even arise, and is that something that could be that people could transcend the need for an identity within wherever they are living? So is that a core factor as to why people kind of seek to be part of a group? Now that could be based on either culture, language, religion, whatever. And anyone who's kind of living in any of the immigrant communities, would the need for identity be higher than otherwise?
It always is, and it's a very interesting question. When you're living where you are, you're like a fish in the water. You don't feel the need for the water, it's there. But when you do go out from there, come to Australia, go to Europe, or travel to Africa, you are not anymore surrounded by the waters you are familiar with, and you really look for it, you want it, and you are defining yourself constantly against the other. It's a process, it's a psychological thing, and I don't think we have a reason to fight that, because one simply is looking for the food one likes, a language one speaks, and friendships with people who have had common experiences, which are probably meaning you grew up in the same society, in the same city, you went to the same school, or you followed the same kind of politics, whichever side you were on then. Common experiences, and that's perfectly fine. The problem is not there. Everything is an identity. Being Australian is one, being Indian is one. Saying I am a universalist is also an identity, when you have said I don't want any of these smaller ones. The largest identity is that of being human, that we belong to one global family, that we have common aspirations. As the children, many people do not know this, of one single mother who possibly lived 200,000 years ago, maybe in Africa, maybe near Uganda. We're all children of that one single mother. Our DNA tells it. You, me, he, everyone. In Australia, black, white, tall, short, blonde, brunette, whatever language we speak, we still have the same DNA. The fathers may have been different, but the mothers certainly is the same. The mitochondrial DNA is the same for all of humanity. It's a wonderful feel. We are one family. We've all had one common mother. Yes, 200,000 years ago, but one common mother. Her offspring developed into probably 10,000 people. And they took to the road and they traveled because they knew how to carry water with them. They went to Oman, they came to India. Some, we don't really know how, came to Australia. Some stayed on in the Nicobar Islands. Some went to China. Some went up to Russia. And some crossed the land border or the ice border bridge into what is today's North America. Some went to Europe. From Europe, some took the horse and came back to invade what is today's India. But we've all been the same mother's children. That understanding is much better than any other. It's spiritually very, very ennobling to think that we all are relatives. It doesn't mean we can't have an identity which is political, linguistic, regional. But it's very odd that one should seek to keep an identity after leaving a land because we didn't like it. You have escaped a place, but you keep the memory. I understand. You celebrate an identity which you rejected back home, I can't understand. Which is why I say, don't create these cultural slums outside your place of residence or origins. Celebrate what is universal in that. Don't bring the caste system here. Don't bring regional differences here. You've even left the country. Look at the map, it's a small place from where you are. Put things in perspective. But then you want your biryani, and you want your Rogan Josh, and you want your tandoori chicken. That's part of culture. That's not discrimination. I am only talking about what is negative and that which you carry in the name of identity. I was referring to the killing of a so-called untouchable by a so-called upper caste man because his daughter loved somebody. You kill people for loving? This is a world culture which celebrates guns and not roses. This is a culture where love, kind-heartedness, tenderness should be celebrated and welcomed. I mean, what a beautiful thing it is to love somebody and say, let us have a family together. And to kill them shows a primitiveness. That will be addressed by the law. My question is, what is this rascal sitting in Australia celebrating that for? That's my problem. These are criminals. These are people who have found a better life, who are enjoying the better life, who are participating in the fruits of modern society and are supporting murder. My problem is with them.
Where does that come from? And is it coming from lack of understanding of what gave you freedom in the first place? Or is it coming from the residual feudal mindset? Or is it coming from absolute someone being illiterate, not someone who could not read and write, but illiterate about how the world works and what gave them happiness in the first place and what are they trying to support or propose in that sense?
I think you've given all the reasons in the form of the question. But yes, the vestiges of a primitive kind of thinking developed, ingrained and brainwashed because of a primitive organization of society. The caste system is a primitive organization of society. It is a denial of the dignity of the human. It's because of that, primarily. Secondarily, the thinking, in this particular case, the thinking that your child is your property, that you decide what that child should be.
On that particular part, human relations in a marital world, even if someone probably had spent days, months and years together, they could fall at any point of time. And so it doesn't matter how they come together, they could always fall out. And in a scenario where family sets them up to get married or otherwise, either based on horoscopes or otherwise, is there no probability of that fallout just because there are no basis of commonality to be together other than...
One never knows. I think humans are so dynamic that the boy, the man, the woman at 21 or 25 is never guaranteed to be the same person at age 40. We all change, we all evolve. And sometimes we evolve together, sometimes we evolve away from each other. And whether you marry in the ideal way of liking someone and loving that person, or you do it through an arranged system, you can't be sure of the outcome if you did not put the effort to keep that relation going. But you had such a bad start that you matched Mars and Uranus and Jupiter and Saturn's positions in the sky.
Not the people, but you matched everything else.
Yeah. That would be such a stupid thing to do. But we hope, whichever way that happens, that the partners put in the effort. And marriage is not simply about love, because you could still remain lovers without marrying. Marriage is an institution and it's got so many other components into it. It's got rights, it's got responsibilities, it's got financial goals. You set up a family, a home, and you have goals for yourselves. You retire, you plan for that, you have babies and children and they grow up and you plan for that. And many things can go wrong. But the right thing to do is to be rational about those things, and we might still fail. That's not the end of the world, but one would want to avoid that, wouldn't we?
Is the expectation to be rational when you are either hijacked by your hormones or when you are so clouded by your emotion? How practical is it to expect someone to be behaving irrationally? Because if you take these factors away, one might, but the moment you add on, even the scenario of a guy killing husband of his own daughter, was it kind of so clouded by emotion or irrationality? So, is it right to expect rationality in that state of mind?
Interesting, but these are separate things. Maruti Rao killing Pranay is more about hatred. It's about intolerance. It's about barbarism.
It's not a momentary emotion that...
No, it's planned. How do you organize a supari? How do you pay 1 crore of rupees to somebody to kill someone? Doesn't happen like that. It's not a crime de passion, as they say. It's not something that happened because at that particular moment you were so upset that you did what a thinking man would not do or a human would not do. That would be a crime de passion, and the law allows some leeway for such action. But when you've arranged a hitman from UP for that man to come, you've planned. It's a conspiracy. That's completely very different. And that's not about hormones. That's prejudice, hatred, intolerance, and being a misfit in human society. Hormones play a role in creating attractions or the opposite among the youth. Is it rational to expect them not to play a role? It's not rational. That's our biological state. It's rational to tell ourselves that we know it's the hormones. That much, yes. But tell me, which hormone will let you go and look at the position of Saturn in the sky? That's stupidity. It's not hormones. Physical attraction is guided by hormones, not superstition or unthinking behavior in these circumstances that I've referred to. So we have to tease out these factors. Hormones are important, or else why would people even have physical relations if there were no hormones? It's nature's way of helping us continue our race. It's society's way of helping us advance our families, to create them and to advance them. Of course, the meaning of family has evolved. It's no longer man-woman, it's no longer man-woman and child. It could be man and man, or it could be just a group of people who like each other. There's a plurality in this understanding, perfectly fine. I don't have to be bound by one particular understanding of what a family should be. But there should be care, there should be responsible human relations. That is important. However you define the family, it should have these elements in there. And then in some legal systems, you are given some rights when you declare you are a family. If a partner dies, the pension might be shared to an extent with the surviving person, and so on and so forth. The rights on children and the responsibilities for children. How you have to take care of a child that you have begotten. Those are things that come as responsibilities and guarantees and safeguards for humans. That's fine.
Big Boss program. The question was directed towards what was your view of the rationality / thought process changing in a setup that is, they know it is artificial, they know it's not going to be permanent for sure, but in that moment or in that period, people behave differently than they otherwise. So is that a setup that changes their behavior, or is it that they couldn't kind of take it longer than otherwise, so the social wheels come down pretty soon, or is it their innate behavior that is actually coming out, or is it the artificial setup that is kind of making them behave in a different way than they otherwise would?
You see, I didn't know any of my co-housemates before I met them. So I have no means of judging how they were before they came there. So I was there for 63 days, and I, here and there, not much, watched what happened after I left the house. One thing is for sure, the pressures in the house are not like the pressures that a war situation would put you in, or extreme hunger would put you in, or extreme poverty and so on. It's simply a lot of upper middle class young men and women subject to the slightest of pressures, but I saw them crumbling, and I feel very sad about it. But the setup is that there is pressure. There's a little bit of hunger, not a lot, but there's a bit of hunger. Sleeplessness, partly voluntary, partly engineered, because you have no watch. And after 4 in the evening, because the sun goes behind a fence, you can't even track time after 4 or 5, something like that. So the familiar point de repère, the familiar ways in which you would relate to life have disappeared. No pen, no paper, no TV, no mobile phone. Imagine living without a phone, and no contact with your family or friends. It affects your memory. It does. I didn't feel that I was under pressure. I don't think I was at all. But yet I found that my memory was not very strong. Because none of the familiar things in life which keep memory alive were there. So number one. Number two, every day there are tasks where you have to behave in the way that Big Boss would dictate. Some of them are aimed at creating trouble in human relations. That's a challenge. Some of them are aimed at wringing your emotions. A chap calls 4 people to sit down there and says, Big Boss believes that males do not have enough emotion. Now start crying and show me you have emotion. And I couldn't stop laughing. But some people sat down and cried. So you've given away your emotions, your control over your life to someone voluntarily, knowing it's a social experiment. But I think morally also some of the housemates just failed.
And if I translate that into a scenario where people are probably not very well off or not as literate, and some hypothetical Big Boss coming from a religious institution which kind of gives them that fake authority, tells them something, and they fall prey to that. So so do you kind of draw parallels in terms of how people could behave when they're...
Yeah. I think very few have made the connection that you have. God is Big Boss. And another insight is God is not rational. Big Boss is not either. The belief in God is not rational. The behavior of God has never been shown to be rational in any of the mythologies of the world. So we can connect these things. Yeah, that you would give away the independence of your life to some unknown force that you can't see, but now and then makes an appearance through a voice, that you will let that force decide how you would behave, whether you should be happy, whether you should relate to someone or not, is essentially the kind of thing we are fighting as humanists in the irrational world. Like I said, no one's against passion and emotion, it's the irrationality. Because irrationality can lead to injustice, especially when you cannot question it. So during the 63 days I was there, I do not believe I accepted anything that I thought was irrational. I was not forced to. And I think it's important for people to know, whether in Big Boss house or in the larger mad society, no one's forcing you.
Right. But isn't the fundamental premise there is that someone actually understands what is rational, what is irrational, and hence chooses. But for someone who doesn't even distinguish between those two, he falls prey for that. So
yes, and which is why we should educate each other, because irrationality too is part of human nature, and we should see which parts of it we should nurture. Cruelty is part of human nature, but we end up promoting kindness and charity and sympathy and empathy, because these are positive emotions. These help human society get to a better situation, a happier life. So we should be good with promoting these things. And it's not difficult to learn rationality, because most of the times, whether we recognize it or not, we are living rational lives. But in the crucial moments of life, we might make a mistake by not being rational. Can we protect ourselves from that? That's the challenge. And that's a civilizational challenge. It's not the challenge in a madhouse. It's for everyone from birth to death. My regret is, of the 16 people, every week you have one person less. People have not understood the game, that the game is about being yourself, not simply surviving till the end, whatever be the compromise of values. That's my disappointment.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's been really, really wonderful conversing with you. I would rather not have as long as I could, but I think the paucity of time limits that. So thanks a lot for coming on board. It was great having a chat with you, and we would love to have you again when we are around. And also promote your good work in the humanist world through this interview and in any other form and shape that we could.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to respond to your very insightful questions. My whole point has been this, that belief drives behavior. If belief is irrational, behavior will also be it 9/11 in the US, be it the killing of people in the villages of Africa and India and Papua New Guinea and Fiji Islands. It's always irrationality. It's the task of the humanists and the liberals, whether they are humanist or not, to promote evidence-based understanding of the universe and to help create human relations that are responsible and equal. So in that process, I hope we can join hands and we can take a broader civilizational agenda further. This is not about being against religion. This is about being for the human. So a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm BABU GOGINENI. Watch me on Star to see what I say about humanism, about human civilization, human values, human rights, and about Big Boss.